Hi, I'm Hannah Durden and you're listening to the Outdoors Group podcast. This podcast is a call to arms to get children and young people outside again. It's your one-stop shop for all things outdoor, child, young person and education related. Thanks for tuning in. If Dartmoor is a favourite haunt of yours, or if you love spending time outdoors, if you have a child doing their Duke of Edinburgh or participating in 10 tours, or even if you just live in Devon, you'll probably have heard about the recent court case involving a wealthy landowner on Dartmoor and Dartmoor National Park regarding wild camping. At a time when spending time outside is even more important for our mental and physical well-being than ever, this case has caused quite a stir. So I'm very glad to be joined by Emma and Claire, who have both been involved in the challenge to protect our rights to wild camp, to discuss it today. Emma is an expedition guide and outdoor educator who has worked in related roles for 20 years, and Claire is a nature-based therapist and facilitator. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'd like to start by asking if you guys could explain what the case is, how the court ruled a few weeks ago, and kind of where we're at now with the situation.
Well, the case has been brought against the Dartmoor National Park by Alexander Darwell, who owns 4,000 acres of land on the southwest edge of Dartmoor. And he is appealing a clause in the bylaw that suggests that wild camping isn't included in that. Obviously, it's been customary for people through decades that people have been coming here wild camping, but he is appealing against the legal right for that to happen.
Yeah.
So before Christmas, the court case came to pass on December the 12th to the 14th. I actually attended the court case, the rally and the court case in London, and it was the information or the action was distilled down to that from the 1949 Act, Parliamentary Act, which opened national spaces, only included as recreation hiking and horse riding.
Okay.
So by the very fact of the omission of wild camping isn't included in this act.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a lot of talk about camping as occupation or camping as recreation.
Yeah.
But it wasn't included, so it was defined as not included in that act. And the bylaw that existed, an ancient bylaw that existed from, well, when I say ancient, is customary before 1985, but the bylaw came to pass in 1985, didn't actually include wild camping.
Okay.
So over Christmas there was a big break, it was adjourned, and last Friday, Friday the 13th, came to pass. The judge ruled that, yes, Mr. Darwell was absolutely correct, and no longer will wild camping be a right to access on his land, and therefore the land of Dartmoor. So it was existing, it was the only place in England, which actually only 0.2% of the land in England and Wales, where you were allowed to wild camp, and that looked like 2 nights. You're allowed to spend 2 nights in one place, following the leave no trace or positive trace principles. And then you move on. Yeah. So, that has been removed. So it's now there's no right to access wild camping on any land in England and Wales.
Unless permission is granted by the landowner, which is obviously really problematic for many reasons, which I don't know if you want to go into that.
Because so that happened on Friday, and then last week Dartmoor National Park announced that they'd done a deal as such, didn't they?
Yes, a deal that's been... when you first look at it, well, when a number of us first looked at it, it could look quite good, but actually it isn't at all. It's a complete stitch-up. Yeah. So it is now that we have to ask permission from the landowners to wild camp on their land.
Okay.
And so it's a permissive right.
Yeah.
And so the landowners have indicated where they will allow this permission to happen on their land, which has actually been a reduction of 18% of what already existed.
Yeah.
And they will be paid by Dartmoor National Park for that to happen.
Which is taxpayers' money.
Which is taxpayers' money, exactly.
And I think one of the other reasons it can appear something that it's not at first is that actually the areas that have now been designated in this so-called agreement between Dartmoor National Park and the landowners, that there will be a map, or maybe there already is by now already, showing where that area is. So it sort of, on paper, we as an individual don't have to now ask permission as such, because Dartmoor Park have, like, you know, covered that with them. Yeah. But of course, we're still completely beholden to the landowners changing their mind at any time. And of course, the other thing is about this payment. Yeah. So, you know, for decades, there was this free wild camping, which carries with it, you know, obviously not just the financial freedom, but the spiritual, existential, emotional, physical, all those things. Yeah. And that is caught up within that, which is that could just be squeezed at any time, you know.
Mm. And it's the, you know, it creates an uncertainty that this permission is only permission and can be actually revoked at any time. Yes.
On a whim.
On a whim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Alexander Darwell, the guy behind this, can you guys tell me a bit about him and why what he wants? Why did he want to kind of take away that right for people?
Why was it important to him?
Yeah.
So he's a hedge fund manager, and he was already, with his wife Diana, the owner of 16,000 acres on an estate in Scotland. Okay. And then I think it was 2011, it's at least 10 years ago, I think slightly more, that he bought up these 4,000 acres in Dartmoor. And, you know, sadly, what we're learning is that as soon as he arrived, he began to, I don't mean this as a personal jibe, but a factual experience of people living in the community where he then arrived into with that expanse of ownership. He began putting in gates in places where they'd never existed before.
Did he close a car park that
he
lots
closed?
Of people used?
He closed a car park, and you know, we've got so many lived experiences, stories of people who used to drive to that car park with their small children, go wild camping for a night or two. I mean, I can just feel that all through my body as I'm describing it, and how that was then whipped away from them. So there's been this sort of incremental, you know, like stealth, like. Well, I guess it's not stealth because it was obvious, but it was incremental over the years of people's loss of freedom and you know, capacity to just enjoy the land that's on their doorstep and have those really formative and life affirming and freeing experiences. So that's been the experience of the community on the ground, and obviously other people, you know, travelling into the area for those experiences too. But, you know, what's in it for him? So why did he buy that estate? I mean, again, on paper, what we see is that, and as might not be a surprise given that he's a hedge fund manager, you know, he seems to have been using it purely for financial gain. Yeah. There's, you know, a long history of pheasant shooting there. We know that people who sign up to go pheasant shooting, they pay something like £100 a bird. Wow. Every time a bird is shot, that's what the fee that they will pay to the landowner. So there's an extraordinary financial profit there. Yeah. There's also deer stalking, holiday lets that go on in, I mean, I'm sure across many large estates in the country, and also, as we know, with the Blatchford estate where the Darwells are based. So what we're hearing so far is just a financial story, and we haven't actually heard much back from the Darwells at all to counter.
They've closed their website, I believe, as well over the weekend.
I mean, the one small statement that they made following the court ruling hearing, or the result of that, was, you know, we're really glad there's. I'm not quoting this word for word. No. But you know, we're really glad there's been a thorough exploration of this situation, and we're now, you know, really happy that the land will be used legitimately. Yeah. And I find that a really provocative word. Yes, yeah. Because it's like, who is legislating here? Yes. What is the law accurate and correct just because it's the law, you know?
And what's legitimate? Because pheasant shooting isn't good for the wild, the natural habitats of Dartmoor, is it?
No.
Did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, just to add, so to that, what we're looking at here is an exclusivity rather than an opening up and an inclusivity. So this is a narrowing down of what already existed. And just to contextualise what Claire said, that car park at New Waste that was open now means that anybody who is accessing the moor, which is Storm Moor, and beautiful stone row that is there, has to park in Cornwood. There's no other parking space, and it's a 2.5 kilometre to get to that gate along a single track road.
Not safe.
It's not safe, but it's 2.5 kilometres. So again, it's making it's exclusive to able bodied people. It's cut down the rights of the disabled, for example. So everything is a shrinking in. And in his estate in Scotland as well, for example, when he got there, there was a custom of gold panning. And they again started a legal campaign for that, which they won, and now I believe you're allowed to gold pan in their river for 2 weeks at £10 a day. So again, there's a transaction that's happening.
It's all about money. And also Scotland's different, isn't it, with their right to roam? Because am I right that you can wild camp most places in Scotland?
That's correct.
So they've obviously made it work responsibly in Scotland. And is it legislated in Scotland?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move on to that in a little bit, I think. So if we go back to wild camping, why? Obviously, there's been a massive uproar from people all over the country. Why do you think that's been? What is it about wild camping that's different? I'm going to play devil's advocate. What's it different from camping in like a designated campsite? Just a bit of just what's so special about it.
So, shall I come to that? You've got a first question of why do you think there's an uproar?
Yeah, let's talk
about
that.
I think that there's a little bit in the social psychology and the social psyche of being... people have realised and understood a lot when they were trapped in the COVID pandemic and understood the access to a different environment, to their rooms, to their houses, is absolutely necessary. So that has given them, an example of what happens if, they are trapped. So I think we've got to a stage where people are understanding that that's kind of helped the cause in a way, that understanding that they need that access. So I think that's why this is gaining such huge attention. It's kind of like this has gone a step too far.
And can I just jump in before you talk about wild camping, Em? If you finished on that. And I think as well that there's just something really interesting that is happening with this, where it seems to be crystallizing this moment that we're at in socio-cultural history, whereby there has been such a continual erosion of our rights, that this is almost kind of like a torch, what's it called, a torch paper, or where it's just sort of lit up the whole situation. So it's focused at the moment on wild camping. And it's also within the very immediate context of all the strikes, of course, around the country as well. But it feels like a very fertile time where something has just been seeded and is starting to just really sprout. This is it. This is the reality of what's been happening to us in our culture for decades, actually.
And it's got worse and worse, isn't it, with the like the policing bill and the immigration bill and the schools bill, and then there's more and more. Straw that broke the camel's back.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And we can refer to it as Joanna Macy said, who's an environmental activist. She calls this point the Great Turning, and it's that shift from an industrial growth society to a life-sustaining civilization. This is the point we're in. In our 2,000 years of being, humanity. This is the point of change. And it's very exciting to be in these times, and I think this is kind of in the country's psyche as well, to stand up to this. And there's also, there's a lot of political bravery happening because of the inadequacies we're seeing in the government. So I think because of the weakness of that, people are being more brave to stand up and say what they think.
Like the strikes that I just mentioned.
That's correct.
So, it's I think it's A turbulent time. I was going to say exciting, but I think it's exciting but also quite scary, isn't it? Because the future's a bit unknown of what happens next. But,
and I think that's a really interesting comment as well, because, you know, I'm sure many of us are moving across that spectrum all the time, you know, on a daily, hourly basis even. But also given our own sort of personal context, I think our window of how that moves back and forth will differ considerably. So I guess for some of us, now that we're on the point of this momentum is built and we're on the point of really feeling this community coming together and growing, you know, maybe excitement is more uppermost and more accessible more of the time. And for other people, as these things grow and there's more bubbling in the atmosphere, that could be more unsettling and more disturbing and more frightening, because there's a record of the way these can go depending on which community you're coming from. Yeah. How you experience these situations of uprise and turmoil and change.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we'll move on to just a little bit about wild camping, really. I'd love to hear why you guys love it so much.
Yeah,
and why do you think people in general love it so much?
Maybe not a little bit. This is like the key point, right?
Yes, yeah.
Why wild camping and not, you know, in a designated campsite
with a toilet block?
That's surrounded by fences, right? So this can be nailed in the word freedom. Yeah. And this is the freedom to roam, and this is the freedom to be accountable to yourself, and this is the freedom to. We talk about desire lines, and that's about roaming. It's just being in self and feeling your way in the landscape. Yeah. And so I talk about freedom, and you know we're talking about. I was talking about accountability and responsibility to be able to be in a landscape where you are choosing where you are camping, the exposure of that, how you're going to be comfortable, what the view's like, what the wind's like, where the water source is, you know, all of those questions that give you total accountability to yourself, and that's really empowering. That's so empowering. So there is, you know, this human side of empowerment, but there's also this communion with nature that you don't. When you say nature, you know, nature's a kind of a bit of a contentious word, but communion with a landscape or an environment that you won't get, you know, lined up with other tents in a paid transactional campsite. So it's, you know, it is a bigger communion with nature. And I would also say that the difference, I think the really important difference between, and I'd like to speak this out, is between wild camping and hiking, when you're quite transient through a place, is that pause, that quiescence in place, which allows you to experience it fully. And I'd just like to read you a quote from Nan Shepherd, who wrote The Living Mountain and spent a lot of time in the Cairngorms. And she said, "No one knows the mountain completely who has not slept on it. As one slips over into sleep, the mind grows limpid, the body melts. Perception alone remains. One neither thinks nor desires nor remembers, but dwells in pure intimacy with the tangible world." And I think that's a beautiful description of what it's like to wild camp. Yeah,
I love that. It's a nice segue to, because you mentioned about the freedom, and I know the Right to Roam movement has been really involved in this kind of this whole issue, and there's obviously wider issues here when it comes to people having access to natural kind of wild spaces. What do you think this case is going to do for the larger movement? I know that they've said that their following has kind of absolutely skyrocketed as a result of this, and why is that kind of access important?
It's fundamental. I mean, we have come from the land. We are of the land. As Em was saying, the word nature is a bit contentious, and that's because almost by naming it as separate to ourselves, we're reaffirming some sense that we've developed over the centuries that we're different from nature. We're not different from nature. We are nature.
We are nature.
And so as we've become more disconnected from the land, this has really sort of exaggerated that sense of individual self, that sense of otherness. And by virtue of having more openness and freedom to access the land and country as we feel, when we feel, appropriately, responsibly, this will absolutely start to weave us back into who we really are. It will inspire and grow that interconnectedness between us and other than human beings and the earth around us and everything that is part of the earth. So it at the moment, the fact that we have had so little access to the countryside in this sort of freeing and spontaneous way that Em was describing in relation to wild camping, just represents as well this ownership that has become more and more primary and more privileged within our culture. And it's another way of setting us apart from each other. Yeah. So it's all connected. And if we can bring this Right to Roam Act into being, which feels like it's very possible now, it can change so much. It can change so much because it really feeds that sense of empowerment, and it enables us to remember how to share and how to be.
Yeah. What we are looking for is culture change. Yeah. Okay, and it's the way we view our landscape and our land. Because currently we are in a place of a hegemonic orthodoxy of exclusive dominion over land. Okay, and we want that revoked, changed, turned upside down, so we can be able to roam anywhere we like, obviously within reason and with respect to land. And we're not talking about going and camping in people's gardens, as we get a lot of comments about. But that's what we're looking at. We're looking at culture change in the way we view our landscapes.
And you're saying that you think that it's within reach now, this Right to Roam Act. Kind of what's next, I guess, for the movement? What do you think they're going to do on the back of this to try and push forward with that?
Well, it's a critical moment. Yeah. Obviously, we've just had one of the biggest land right protests in living memory. Yeah. And I just feel that go through my body. I mean, it's still barely landed with me how powerful that was on Saturday. And as a result, we, of course, want to really respond to that momentum and that swell of support. Yeah. So we are asking everybody to go to the Right to Roam website. Yeah. And there is an example letter there for people to download and modify and use their own words, but to then send to their MPs. Brilliant. And we're really looking for that to happen this week.
Okay. So I can put that in the show notes for people, the link to the website.
That
so they
would be wonderful,
through.
Hannah.
So yeah. That's I mean, because that was going to be one of my questions as well, was what can people do? So that's a really easy, tangible thing that someone can listen to this and go, right, okay, now I'm going to write to my MP.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people have very busy lives. So if it's much more accessible to email, then go for it. Yeah. If there is the potential to actually...
Hand deliver.
Like,
do a letter. Yeah.
Do an actual letter in the post. That would be amazing, because it's that tangible, feels very powerful, these things coming through the letterbox. Yeah. It's like, whoa, I see this pile, rising on my desk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just going to say that also on that's the biggest thing you can do, but you can also keep sharing on the Right to Roam Instagram, and stars are for everyone.
I'll put
Instagram
those in the
as well.
Show notes as well. Yeah.
You also can, set up your own trespass group in your area. Yeah. And there's also information on the Right to Roam website to be able to do that responsibly.
Yeah. Brilliant. So you just mentioned Saturday, so it seems like a really lovely time. I'm so grateful for you guys, because I know you're probably still reeling from it. Tell me about how it went, and about the legend of Old Crocken, and just kind of everything, really. So Saturday. Largest one since, I've forgotten what it's called.
1932 Kinder Mass Trespass.
Yes, which is incredible.
Yeah, which, it was phenomenal. Do you want us to start from where, some facts and figures and
let's
how it came to pass, really?
Yes,
yeah. Well, this group actually started as a splinter group from the Totnes Trespass group back in October. and there was 5 people
Yeah.
that came into this group. We called it Defend While Camping.
Yeah.
And from that, it picked up some momentum after the court case, and it grew to 15. And then for Saturday, we actually had 80 people in our organising group putting this together within 1 week. It was phenomenal.
Incredible.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. The amount of cooperation, participation,
collaboration,
creativity.
It's all the C's, basically.
And the sacrifice
Communion.
in people's lives to go, all right, we're going to not do these things we normally do and put all our effort into this for 1 week. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what we were really clear about is not retaliating as a us and them war. We wanted to galvanise by conjuring up and celebrating the joy and spirit that exist within humanity. Yeah. So I saw it as a model of a peaceful protest.
Yeah.
That's what I saw it as, and I think, and I don't know about you. What about yourself?
I think that's a really lovely thing to spring from, to talk about the actual community of Cornwall itself.
Yeah.
You know, there's a village there.
Yeah.
People have been living there and right next to the Darwell estate and experiencing, as we discussed earlier, some of the changes that have come about since the Darwells arrived. And it's a small community and it's a tiny village. And suddenly the people coming from outside are suggesting meeting there to start this peaceful protest. And, you know, this is a very unusual thing. As we've said, it turned out to be this huge land rights protest. But even when originally we were thinking we might have a very small gathering just to really honour what's going on at the moment and take stock. And we were thinking, you know, maybe 50 or 100 people. Yeah. And then on Friday the 13th, when the result of the ruling came in that wild camping was no longer going to be allowed except with permission, it grew very, very quickly, and we realised it was going to be something else altogether. But we couldn't know for sure how big it was going to be. But we started communicating with the community, and you know, first of all, I think we were probably quite tentative. I mean, who knows? You know, it's fair enough if people are wary, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive from beginning to end. And we're now receiving messages from people in Cornwall who were really, you know, they were supportive emotionally, and they were also supportive on the ground and very practically, you know, tea bags. People, the night before we got there on Saturday, in their homes in Cornwall, were baking 40 pasties each to take to the pub.
That's incredible.
To make sure that there was enough food to feed people.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really get more touching than that, can you? So, Cornwall itself just really got behind this, and not got behind it, became you know, central to it. Came with us on the walk, took part in the day in various different guises. And it's just been so positive and magical to build community there as well.
Yeah. And what I loved, because I've just been on the sidelines of watching lots of stuff happen, was how responsible it was with, you know, not overwhelming the village. So that walking train from Ivybridge was just incredible to see the footage of hundreds of people walking up so that they, you know, didn't overwhelm their village with cars and things.
Yeah, I mean, the group that was involved in that, you know, hats off to them.
It must have been such a feat.
And there was a huge group, you know, so, you know, we're in contact with the council, the train station, the police, you know, having to liaise with all of those different parties and get on board, which wasn't hard, the community of Cornwall, because it really came from the liaison of the landlady in the Cornwall Inn. She was integral and central.
Tina was amazing.
Shout out to
this.
Tina.
And shout out to Preston as well, who
Yes.
was also so supportive.
Yes. So, it was brilliant. So it was a great example of, you know, building up a team or some organisational structure from pretty much 5 people.
Yeah.
And going back to the numbers and sort of like number crunching. So somebody had this inspired idea. Well, maybe, you know, when we saw the numbers were growing of people who were likely to attend, maybe some people would like to walk from Ivybridge to Cornwall, and maybe somebody would like to lead that. Yeah. So somebody had that wonderful idea. And again, we were like, maybe 40 people will want to walk. You know, let's see, 500 or 600 people walked from Ivybridge to Cornwall.
That's incredible. And how long's that distance?
I think it took them a couple of hours. It's not too far, but it's that will and that openness and that excitement to be part of this day in whatever way it takes to make it work, because obviously that really relieved the pressure from our other way of getting people to Cornwall, which was the shuttle buses and the coaches, because very quickly we realised this tiny beautiful village cannot hold however many cars are going to be needed if people are coming right into the village of Cornwall as part of their travel, part of their journey. So just the creativity, the openness, it's just boundless, really. It's been, hasn't it?
On the social media channels, there's a lot of joyful scenes that I've seen, clips of musicians, and just it felt you can kind of feel the love through the internet. It seems absolutely like it was a joy-filled event. Would you guys kind of say that? Yeah.
And people being intrepid by just accepting how they were going to get there. There's been adventures getting there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure from how far, but I know that from Manchester, Cambridge, Wales, North Wales, from all over pretty much. And then we've got people that are not that able to get up that track. I had somebody actually on their frame, frame with wheels, pushing themselves all the way up, 2.5 kilometres up and down.
That's incredible.
That is the spirit. That's the fire that's in their bellies, that this is unjust. It's a massive injustice to people.
And a local woman was on the protest, and she walked all the way to the moor as well. And she said, I have been camping on this moor for 70 years. And so, I'm presuming she must be 75 or something, and she walked up there with her daughter. I think it was a family member she was with,
Oh,
could I come back?
It does.
I was just going to come back to the reason of the idea of what we were trying to bring, of the celebration and joy, and to give people a different frame of reference to what they know, of which Darwin knows, which is transaction and the duality. So this was about story making. We were unearthing an old story, an old legend of Old Crockham, to make a new story.
Yes.
As a different frame of reference to where we are now.
Yeah.
And that's what our aim was on the day. And the legend of Old Crockham is a legend that comes from, was told by Sabine Baring Gould in 1899, and it's a parable of our times about greed, access and ecology.
Perfect, absolutely perfect.
That's right. I mean, it's just astounding how apt it has been.
If people want to know a bit more about that legend, is there anywhere online they can go to read it? Or because I love a good story, an ancient story.
That's such a good question. Let's see if we can put it up somewhere and let you know.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
So, I mean,
it's accessible because we accessed it.
Yeah, I guess if people just
but
Google,
it would
they'll
be
find the
probably
legend.
helpful.
Yeah.
If you put in 1899 Old Crockham, the version that we're familiar with and that we used on Saturday, because we read it out at the beginning, at the opening when we were getting ready to leave for our walk in Cornwall, then that would probably come up.
So it sounds like it's a very poignant one for this where we are now.
Yeah, exactly. And if people are following Guy Shrubsole, he wrote about Old Crockham in his rainforest book, The Lost Rainforests of the UK or Great Britain or whatever it is. So they'll be able to get to it, I think.
So in terms of numbers, like how many do you guys think were there? Like, I mean, I saw BBC say 3,000. I've heard other people say more.
Yeah, 3.5 to 4.
Wow.
We estimate.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
While we're talking about Old Crockham, we should say something, I think, about how we were able to conjure him up, and what that gave us as a community and what that brought as well. So again, it just felt like this wonderful, magical sort of like serendipitous thing whereby when we were starting to explore how we could make Saturday something very special and different, but also very resonant and appropriate, Lewis, who's in the Stars Are For Everyone campaign, put something out on our trespass group, like, oh, we're sort of thinking maybe a puppet, but we're not sure. Would that be good? Does anybody know of anybody they could recommend who could help us build a puppet? And somebody on the trespass group called Ruth Webb, who comes from Lostwithiel and comes from a family, generations of puppet builders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She was like, me? And so then just, again, that's gone all through my body. So then, within like a couple of weeks or something, we were meeting in the Angel Studio in Totnes for 2 full days of puppet building, led by Ruth in this most, I was going to say masterful way. I can't think of a gender-less way of describing, but just extremely the holding that Ruth brought, and her skill and experience and beauty and joy led to this creation of Old Crocken, and which is, just this stunning being who really consolidated everything on Saturday for us.
Amazing.
Old Crocken. Yeah.
And now I think there was 50 people involved in that build, were there not?
Yeah. So again, we just put the call out, and again, people just put aside their weekend plans, turned up in spades, and stayed for hours at a time. So, and then, people were making soup, and it's just such a wonderful representation of the best side of humanity and community. Yeah.
And we've got the New Line Brewery donated some of their beer, Old Crocken, that was sold in the Cornwood Inn, and the Cornwood Inn wants more of that.
Oh, amazing. Had they already made the beer called it that? Or did they? Wow, that's serendipitous.
Yeah. It sold out really quickly by the time we got to the pub on Saturday. I think it had already gone, unsurprisingly.
So you're yet to try it.
Yeah.
I'll just say one more thing about the old Crocken, if that's okay. So we had the opening in Cornwood at 1:30, and then after a quarter of an hour, we began to do the 2.5 walk that Em described up to the Stall Moor. And when we arrived there, and we were accompanied the whole way by drummers.
Fiddle players as well, I saw.
Yeah. So there was a bunch of musicians at the moor with Old Crocken. I think mainly on the way there were drummers. And again, we'd received information about livestock and horses, so we knew exactly where to quieten down on the walk, and it was the most peaceful walk I've been on in that respect, because we were in nature and we wanted to really respect what was going on around us. And when we got to Stall Moor, a ceremony had been planned, and it was led by Martin Shaw, the mythologist and, inveterate camper and, very experienced person of Dartmoor, who's taken lads to Dartmoor for years, as I understand it, for sort of wilderness experiences. And he led the ceremony. And we thought a lot about the ceremony, and Ruth brought these really... just these really important questions about how does this experience with Old Crocken come about? Because what we're doing here is we're really wanting to move away from presumptions and privilege and demands. And what came about was a very strong feeling that, this mystery and magic of what the moor brings and gives is something that we don't have control over. We can invite and ask and dedicate and see what arises, but we don't actually know, because it's not something that we control. And that felt very important in terms of what we're responding to with Darwell's way of handling things, really. So it was felt that actually let's make a dedication to the moor and to Old Crocken, and then see what arises. And so that's what Martin Shaw led in his beautiful sort of almost like this mischievous wit, but also very grounded and warm and open at the same time. And then following that, Old Crocken appeared on the brow of the hill, and we turned from looking at Martin Shaw, we turned to see this incredible apparition coming over the brow of the hill, surrounded by the musicians. So this is where the fiddle players were as well, and flute players, and so many other musicians too, and dancers. And they just, in this wave came down the hill and then merged with the community. And I think everybody was captivated and moved. It was really hard not to be. But for me, it was encapsulated by what I heard about this little child looking up at Old Crocken and saying, "Is he magic?"
Oh.
I don't think there was a dry eye.
No, I was going to say, well.
No.
Yeah. I can imagine.
And we were blessed. We were blessed with the weather.
Yes.
And somehow that felt significant too.
Yes. Well, after the weeks and weeks of rain that we've had around
here. Yeah. But it just felt like something
welcomed
was
there.
taking care of us. Yeah. We were being welcomed. I think that's really useful, Hannah. Yeah. Because that's what people have not been feeling. Of course, we've been feeling unwelcome, and particularly people who live close by to the estate of the Darwalls. So.
Yeah. Before we move on, do you want to say anything else about Saturday? Either of you guys? No. I mean, it sounds absolutely fantastic. So I guess what next? What happens next from here? Like where are we at? We're at Monday the 23rd. I know that things have been moving very quickly. So kind of what's next in this case?
So, being the leadership team we've been looking at the next steps for some time. So there's meetings going on this week about what happens if Dartmoor National Park do appeal and
don't appeal
or don't appeal. So it's kind of a little bit of a crux strategic moment this week about where we're going. But we want to support, if not Dartmoor National Park, another body in appealing the case.
Okay.
And then we're pushing for the Right to Roam Act into Parliament.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's really useful to say at this point is that in terms of our next action, we're looking to do something in early spring.
Okay.
So a date will be coming really soon. So again, keep an eye on the Right to Roam website if you're following Right to Roam or Guy Shrubsole or Lewis Winks, then you'll see that information come up.
And for now, people can, as you said earlier, they can write to their MP by real letter if possible, and follow the kind of Instagrams and the websites just to see what's happening next.
And keep posting and
I
reposting.
guess we'll know more by the end of the week about what's next.
Exactly.
Is there anything that we haven't mentioned that you guys think is like crucial to talk about today? Anything that you came with? I'd really like to get that across.
So I just want to kind of speak to that fact that the reason I'm involved in this is because I've been working as an outdoor practitioner, but I actually see that role as social activism, for 20 years. And I have been involved in and seen, and the reason why I'm in this is because of the transformation I see in taking people, humans, to the outdoors. When I say outdoors or nature, I mean a different environment to the one they already know, which also gives them a different perspective, a different frame of reference to where they are. So again, it includes a diversity in, it gives them a diversity of reference point, I think, which is also pretty important. So my interest or the reason I've been doing this is because of, I believe in the potential of growth in people. But there's something really key here as well. This is quite human-centric. Outdoor education can be viewed as very human-centric, but there's also, and this needs to be developed, this is an opportunity in the outdoor space to connect more deeply and to understand that, yes, nature is on the wilder moor, but it's also in your back garden. Yeah. Okay, there's an opportunity we have in that, as outdoor educators, to do that, because it's so important to understand that what we're doing is, once we learn and understand the environment, from the water cycles to the geology, we get to understand and have compassion and empathy for that space. Okay, again, which is completely in contrast to the scarcity and striving attitude that is dominant in our culture now.
Yeah. Claire, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things, if that's okay. So I just wanted to follow on from what Em was saying, and from what I think has been threaded through our discussion today. And I just really want to fully name it, which is around how supportive being outside is for our well-being and our mental health. So Em began by talking about the pandemic and how we realised that it was fundamental to reconnect with the outdoors if we could, and for people who weren't able to do that during that time because of their living situation. how much more they were impacted by the pandemic and the conditions of living in built-up areas. So I'm an ecotherapist, and I just am blown away by, again and again, being alongside people and seeing how nature is nurturing, nourishing, empowering, as Em was just saying, in so many different ways. And the ultimate is that full immersion, which is what wild camping brings. Yeah. And if that's not possible, there are other ways, as Em was saying. So we can also be more aware of how we can bring nature towards us. But of course, we want the opportunities to fully immerse as well in nature. So yeah, the outdoors for our mental health and well-being is something we have always known. Yeah. And again, we've become more removed from over time as other values have become more dominant, as you were both just describing. So that was one thing I wanted to say. And the other thing, you were asking earlier, Hannah, about what next for us as a movement. And it's great to have that question out there and for people to be keeping an eye on the socials and the websites and to become involved. And also we have, a huge awareness that we want to really make our movement as truly representative as modern Britain as possible in all its diversity and plurality. And at the moment, we're super aware that this has sort of, the genesis of this has been in the southwest, which does have still a very broad demographic of being a very white community. Yes, yeah. And we know that so much more needs to be done for our national parks to be truly landscapes for everyone. We do support the Glover Review recommendations, and part of that is including the need for more diversity on the boards of our national parks. So there's loads to be done, and change is coming. Yeah. And we want help and we want support, and we really welcome any guidance and input. So in the meantime, as our campaign, The Stars for Everyone, is growing, we just want to be really clear, this is a movement for everyone. Yes. We are fighting for what we're fighting for so that everybody can access this freedom, and especially those who can't get up to an inaccessible corner of Dartmoor on a Saturday at the drop of a hat, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, so many people within our campaign are working specifically to make sure that we extend nature access to people of colour, to socially disadvantaged groups. And we're just really looking for universality of access, and that has been a focus from the outset. So we're going to continue to, keep the conversation and the dialogue really open and build relationships. And we really invite people to get in touch with support and ideas for that. And we would love the movement to grow in that way. Yeah. And it's fundamental that it does. Yes,
absolutely. That we've come to the end of our chat today. So Em and Claire, thank you so much for joining us, particularly today, like 9 o'clock on the morning after the big event. I know you guys must be exhausted and emotionally and physically. So thank you so much for opening up your kind of home for me, Claire, and for joining us, Em, for this.
Thank you, Hannah. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Hannah. It's it feels really important to keep talking, as Em was saying, keep the story alive, keep sharing it, and keep understanding it, because it's changing all the time, and that is exciting, and it's really important to just keep it alive. Yeah. So thank you so much for making this happen.
Oh no, you're very welcome. Thank you, guys.
Can I put in a quote from Joseph Campbell?
That'll be a lovely way to end. From who is it from?
Joseph Campbell.
Okay.
Who is an American author. The goal of life is to make your heartbeat match the beat of the universe, to match your nature with nature.
A huge thank you again to Claire and to Em for joining me so early on a Monday morning after their involvement in what was the largest land rights march in our generation. Just incredible. I really enjoyed that conversation. Hope you did too. Please do stay up to date with what's happening on the Right to Roam website, and on Instagram you can follow Right to Roam or the Stars Are For Everyone. And please take 5 minutes to email your MP this week as they suggested, or better yet, take 10 minutes and print out that letter and pop it up to your postbox. It all makes a difference. So yeah, if everyone listening could do that, that'd be fantastic. And we've released this one a little bit early just because the things are moving so quickly with it. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, back to a Friday. And until then, please share this podcast far and wide. Follow us on your podcast player and give us a subscribe and a rate so that more people can find us. Thanks for listening.